Okay, guys, next question. How does marijuana actually work? So, marijuana generally contains two psychoactive chemicals which affect your brain called THC and CBD. When people generally think of marijuana, they think of getting high, becoming in a euphoric state, hallucinating, getting paranoid. All of those effects are related to the THC, not the CBD. The CBD generally calms people down, makes them more relaxed, relieves pain, helps them sleep. So, when talking about THC, the way that THC works in the brain is THC is a chemical that binds to a certain receptor called the cannabinoid receptor. And the way that receptors work is basically think of like a key, right? So when you take a key and you put it in a lock, and if the key fits, then the lock opens and there's an effect of the door being able to be opened. However, with neurons, it's a bit different. So with neurons, instead of a key going into a lock, it's a chemical that's basically going into a receptor in a lock and key type mechanism. And if the chemical fits that receptor, then that receptor is going to cause an activity to take place, either inhibitory or excitatory. So if it's inhibitory, it's going to stop further brain cells or neurons from firing, and if it's excitatory, it's going to cause more brain cells or neurons to fire and become more active. So what THC does is THC binds to these naturally occurring cannabinoid receptors in your brain, and it unlocks them, and it makes them either become more active or less active depending on the parts of the brain that these receptors are in. So THC is going to bind to cannabinoid receptors in the hippocampus, which is the part of the brain that involves the formation of new memories. And that's why when a lot of people take marijuana, they have trouble remembering things because they're unable to form new memories, because the THC is binding to cannabinoid receptors in the hippocampus, and it's acting as inhibitory agents and stopping brain cells from being active. And therefore, because those brain cells aren't active, they're not going to be able to work in formulating new memories. Marijuana also, there are also cannabinoid receptors in the nucleus accumbens, which control for pleasure, right? So, and those are excitatory. So when the THC binds to the to the cannabinoid receptors there, it's going to cause the brain cells to become more active, and therefore someone's going to feel more pleasure, right? Also, it's going to affect the somatosensory system and in the part of the brain called the thalamus. And therefore, when the THC binds to the cannabinoid receptors in the thalamus, it's going to cause people to sense things in different ways. The thalamus is basically responsible for like connecting the sight, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching. So all of the, physical types of five senses, that's what the thalamus basically controls for. So when you take marijuana, the THC in the marijuana is going to bind to the cannabinoid receptors in the thalamus, and it's going to change the way that you see things, the way that you hear things, and the way that you smell, taste, and feel things. That rhymes. But that's basically how THC works in the brain.